Good evening. I hope you had a happy Halloween out there. And this is my second soup recipe. I know it seems strange I'm doing two soup recipes in a row, but it's starting to get cold. I figured it was that kind of season for soup. And this is the one that's a favorite of a lot of people, usually when I make it anyway. And at most places, usually gets people ooh when they hear about it. So it's broccoli cheddar cheese soup. And I've laid out the ingredients. Heavy whipping cream, it's a pint. Broccoli, it's actually, we got it from Sam's Club. It's been cut into florets. But if you were doing this yourself and you were cutting off the huge crowns of broccoli, you could actually include the stems for the sake of the soup. They actually have a nice flavor, and you know, they're going to cook down, and people aren't really going to notice the look of them. They're going to, see the green more so than they're going to see the stem itself. We're going to use a half a pound of those. There's a pound here, so we'll cut it in half. Quarter cup of flour, that's going to be for the roux. Ground nutmeg, that's going to be for the seasoning. Kosher salt, pepper, carrots, onions, butter. 2 tablespoons of that is going to be to saute the carrots and onions, and the rest of the butter is going to be used to make a roux with the flour that's going to thicken the soup later. And over here, kind of getting heated up, is some chicken bouillon in 2 cups of water, and cheese. Now the cheese in the recipe normally calls for 8 ounces. That's at least 8 ounces there. It's probably more. I like to go a little heavy on the cheese whenever I make broccoli cheddar cheese soup. So first thing you want to do is get the appropriated amount of butter here. You can usually look on the side. It'll tell you the measurements. So I want to get about 2 tablespoons. There we are. Put it into a skillet that's been on medium heat. Well, not a skillet, a pot rather, because you're going to need all the space you can get for the soup. And of course you want to move the butter around so it doesn't brown or anything. You want to take it off the heat and make sure that the butter melts. And we'll be ready to add the vegetables to it when the foam stops for a second. Stops foaming up. And the butter's melted. And there we are. Come back over here. Now what you want to do is just keep stirring until the onions are clear but not brown. And the carrots don't have to be totally soft at this point. They're going to continue to cook as the rest of the soup continues to cook. This step does not take very long at all. So actually, I think we're almost there. Alright, that should just about do it. Now, we're going to add the rest of the butter. Let that melt in there. What's left should be about 1/4 cup of butter. And just to recap, I used 1 carrot and 1/2 of a medium onion in this. And this is a soup recipe that can easily be doubled, which is good because if you have a large group of people, they're going to want it because it's very rich, very delicious. Alright. And it continues to melt. It'll help it melt if you break it up a little bit. Technically, you're supposed to separate the onions and the carrots out of here when you make the roux, but I don't find it a necessary step. Now, we're going to add the flour and turn the heat down a little bit. I had it on medium, now it's about medium-low. And we're not going to make this a very dark color. It's going to be sort of, as they call, a blonde roux. It's just going to be a touch golden brown. Just a touch. Want it to cook for a minute or two so it gets the flour taste out of it. Now, the reason that you're actually making this roux, if I didn't specify it enough, is because you want the soup to be thick. That's one of the hallmarks of a good broccoli cheddar cheese soup. You know, people don't want to sink their teeth into one that's too runny. It'll taste the same, but it just won't have that thickness that people like. And it looks like, yeah, it looks like this roux is done. So I'm going to add the chicken bouillon here. It's 2 cups of water and 2 chicken bouillon cubes here at the bottom. They've been soaking in it a little bit, so it'll dissolve a little easier when I bring the temperature up. Now, I'm going to get the broccoli, excuse me. You want to go for small pieces, you don't want them that are too gargantuan sized. Remember, the broccoli, as this continues to cook, will come apart a little bit, but it won't dismantle the more gigantic pieces of broccoli. Broccoli's good for you, kids. Eat up. Let's see. Yeah, here's a little one. There we go. Bring that up to temperature. I'm putting it on high. I want to stir the at the bottom, along with all the ingredients that are together. And I know it looks very crowded in here right now, but keep in mind that the broccoli is going to break down, and we will be adding 2 cups of cream and some cheese. So, we'll join us in a few minutes when the soup has come up to a boil. Was that right? Okay. Now, as you can see, the soup has been brought up to simmer there, and now I will add the cream. My favorite part. Again, that's a pint of cream. I'll rinse that out later. Remember to recycle. Bring this back up to simmer again. But you have to watch it real carefully. You can add some salt and pepper. Not too much. Let people do some of that at the table if they want to. Just enough to give it flavor. This is a favorite of my wife. She specifically asked for it the other day. And the nutmeg. Just a couple of dashes. Don't want to overdo it with the nutmeg. Okay, it's simmering. Now we're going to turn it down to a little under medium low, right about there. And we're going to let it cook for 30 to 35 minutes. And then we will add the cheese. And that will be our next step. And I'll show you how to add the cheese. There's a specific little trick to it, so you make sure that the soup turns out okay. Alright, see you in a few. Okay, and the soup's been cooking for the designated time. The broccoli should be nice and soft. Looks like this. See how creamy it is? Now, we're going to add the cheese. I love cheese. I could eat all kinds of cheese day and night. Now what you want to do is you just want to add a little bit of the cheese to start off with. Because if you add too much of it at once, it won't melt right. And the consistency of the soup will be off. It won't be a creamy consistency like you want. It'll be sort of a grainy, sort of separated consistency, and you don't want that. So you want to make sure that you just melt a little bit at a time. Just kind of bring your whisk up and make sure that there's no cheese attached to it. It looks like there isn't, so that cheese got taken care of pretty quick there, so you can add some more. I like to take the whisk out, so I make sure that no cheese sticks to the whisk that way. And then we'll just add the rest of that cheese in there. Of course, I grated this cheese by hand. Because actually, I found out something interesting about the pre-shredded cheese that you can buy in grocery stores. They actually put sawdust fiber in it to make sure that the cheese doesn't stick together in the bags. Kind of an interesting little factoid there, to say the least. Yeah, and you don't really even need to cook this for that long. You just need to stir it up until the cheese melts, and it looks like it has. We're all done. The only thing we need to do is get a ladle, serve it up into some bowls, and I don't have any delicious French bread laying around, but if you have some crusty bread or some French bread, that goes perfectly well with the soup to dip it in. And you could even have a bread bowl too. Some stores sell those. If you're an adept baker, you could even bake a piece of bread like that yourself and do it yourself, but that's beyond the capabilities that I have. So okay, that is the recipe. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments section. And as the great Julia Child used to say, bon appetit. So how was it, dear?
Why are you filming me?